There's been only two things about From that have never changed this entire time. The first would be that Victor is very suspicious and the townspeople need to be watching him very closely. And two would be that the writing of these characters frequently goes from slightly annoying all the way to painfully and absolutely atrocious. And as we saw in the last episode, it's obvious that this season isn't going to be any different. Jim and Kenny going out into the woods to look for Tabitha without either of them asking Victor where he took her and how they got there was one of the dumbest moves that's ever been made in this entire show. The incredible stupidity of these characters never seems to amaze me, as most of the situations they find themselves in can be easily avoided by just having anything close to an average IQ. Look at what happened in the final parts of this episode as an example. Boyd's first thought after seeing the livestock running around at nighttime was to immediately go outside and try to bring them back. And him doing this would actually make sense if he wasn't living in a world full of demons actively trying to torture them. The way he doesn't analyze the situation at all and just chooses to endanger Jade's life without even telling him what's going on, it's extremely dumb and shows no regard for anyone's life, including his own. And it's made even dumber by the fact that they've never seen the monsters attacking the animals before this episode. And the fact that Boyd is one of the only people who knows all about the entities that have specifically manipulated him multiple times, and yet he didn't even consider that it might be yet another trap, shows how stupid the characters actually are and how stupid the writing really is. And it's not meant to be a character flaw, because we've seen this same stupidity over and over in every character in the show. Ethan opening the door to try to save the goat was one of the worst moves we've ever seen, because we literally saw him in this episode saying that he's already accepted that goat is going to be killed anyways. So why would you risk your life and your sister's life to try to save it? And at this point, I'm very sure they both unconsciously assume their mom was already killed by the monsters. If anything, they should be extremely protective of each other and constantly be afraid to mess up and get somebody killed. Especially Julie, because remember, Ethan was almost killed by Sarah while she was out partying with the homies. Not to mention, Julie should know firsthand just how terrifying this place really is because of what happened to her in the dungeon, and I'm very sure she wouldn't want Ethan having that same experience. So both of them being so stupid and irresponsible is really unrealistic considering what they've experienced. But I guess the people they're surrounded by, there's a lot of things that happen throughout the show that just doesn't make a lot of sense, like how they put Frank in the box for not boarding up his windows, but 90% of the windows of the town aren't even boarded up to begin with. But what makes this all even weirder is that they did in fact used to board up the windows, but they stopped doing it for some weird reason. But if they all stopped doing it, then why would they berate this guy specifically for not boarding up his windows? It's just... oh man, these characters need to do better. They need to act smarter and more realistically, because a lot of these characters genuinely feel like clowns. But season 2 was where it was by far the worst. Tabitha found where the monsters had been living, and she also saw the cave drawings, but she decided not to tell everybody about it. It's so dumb. Victor not saying anything is par for the course, and we all know he's a very suspicious guy, but you can't use the excuse that Tabitha or anybody else is afraid of being seen as crazy for something that has tangible evidence. The monsters' bodies are physically down in the tunnels, and the writing is literally on the wall. So to see that scene where she was arguing with Jim about what she saw is very stupid, because it's not a matter of faith. If she took him down to the tunnels, he would see exactly what she was describing. But the writers choose to make them argue about something that would take less than 10 minutes to prove. It's dumb. The blatant refusal to share information is definitively the worst part of the show, and in general just shows how selfish these people really are. Even with the biggest excuse people use to justify this, that they're afraid of being seen as crazy or whatever, which doesn't even apply when you have physical evidence, but What this shows is that they care more about their perception than helping the people who they'll obviously leave behind when they die, and they don't care about the people who'll be coming into the town after they die. They choose not to write down the history of the town or whatever great discoveries they made when they were alive, so when they inevitably get killed, the new people who come into the town will have to start all over from the beginning, which is really stupid. The only reason we've progressed as much as we have as a species is because we've been passing down information for hundreds of thousands of years. The only reason we know not to eat this or that fruit is because there's been dozens or hundreds of millions of people who brutally died because they did make that mistake. But the people around them told other people not to eat those particular fruits, and that's why we've survived as long as we have. That's why the people of this town need to be writing down everything they know, because when someone sees those books, they'll already know about the lighthouse, the talismans, the faraway trees, the demonic children, the boy in white, the caves, and even the cave drawings. And that means those new people won't have to start from scratch. But the people of this town, they're very selfish and they have no foresight to think about the future. We've seen this so many times, like Jade going into the caves without telling anybody else where he was going. But if he did tell them and never came back, then you could just write it on the record and say, oh, there was a guy named Jade ... At one point he went into the caves, he never came back. So the assumption we now have is the monsters can kill you even during the daytime. Therefore, proceed with caution. It's a very simple message, but conveys everything you would need to know. Just write it down, whatever it is that you're thinking of, whatever it is you've experienced it, write it down, keep records of it. You don't have any idea what's going to be the key to cracking the mystery, so you need to keep everything written down. At least then, regardless of what happens in the future, whether it's a massacre or just some idiot going postal on the town, the people who'll come after you won't have to start from zero. They'll already have this abundance of information about Fromland. The people of this town definitely need to do more, act smarter, and genuinely just be more human, because a lot of the things they've been doing simply don't make any sense, and it's obvious that these actions being taken by the characters aren't meant to be character flaws, because it's been going on for a very long time. But something else that's been going on for a similarly long time is the theory of From being a simulation. So watch this video I made on the new evidence from the last episode, because we actually saw a lot that's in favor of this theory, and that genuinely terrifies me.